Hi, everybody. This is novelist and screenwriter C. Courtney Joyner.
And I'm Mark Jordan Legan, a film historian and co-host of Film Freaks Forever podcast.
And we're here with Rocket Attack U.S.A.
Yes. I believe it was also released as 5 Minutes to Zero.
Yes.
Well, let's take in these names. You'll see Arthur Matrano. He is about the only actor, right, that went on to have a career.
Yes. And I remember Art Matrano used to do that the bad magic act. The bad magic act.
And he was
Absolutely.
on The Tonight Show and The Merv Griffin Show and, of course, Police Academy movies. But yeah, you'll see him as a truck driver here, and there is life in his eyes, which you can't say for everybody else in this movie.
Well,
well, here, let's take in these Wardrobe by Eves.
Yes.
Let's talk about this because there he is, the one and only Barry Mahon.
And
what a life, right?
Yes, indeed. Incredible life, actually, that is so much more interesting than the movies he made.
Yes,
and
very true.
He was a very distinguished war hero. In fact, was in the Flying Eagles squadron for Britain. He was a American volunteer and downed, I believe, 6 German planes.
Yes.
Damaging another, I believe, 55 or 60.
Truly a flying ace.
He really was. And, of course, it was his work as a pilot and his reputation as a pilot that got him hired by Errol Flynn to be his personal pilot after World War II, and then eventually became his business manager.
Yes. And, of course, I mean, amazingly, not only does he survive getting shot down, but then he also survives being a prisoner of war.
Twice.
Yes.
He gets shot down. He has to make a crash landing in the ocean, is captured by the Germans, put into a prisoner of war camp. He escapes, gets captured again, and escaped again.
Yes. And then he was finally liberated by Patton's Third Army.
Yes.
In 1946. And of course, isn't it fascinating, Courtney, that the first prisoner of war camp he was sent to was Stalag Luft 3. And in 2 different compounds, 2 different movies were made of the escape attempts.
That's right.
From that prison camp.
Because, of course, because the name of it tells the story, because that was a prison camp that was run by the Luftwaffe.
Yes.
And since he was a pilot, they had other pilots guarding him.
And it's, of course, the big, major motion picture, of course, that everyone always talks about is The Great Escape. But the other little British film about the other escape attempt is The Wooden Horse.
Oh,
the 1950.
I know of the film. I have never seen it.
Oh, I saw it, and it's Leo Genn and David Tomlinson. But yeah, that is definitely the forgotten one of these big escapes from that camp. But as you said, Barry had the most fascinating life, and his life was maybe a little more fascinating than some of these cinema treats he gave us.
Well, this movie, of course, was made at the height of the quote-unquote Red Scare, which, unfortunately, if we look back at it now, and there was a point where all of this was, just fodder for jokes, and weren't we silly and everything else. And now we kind of turn around and go, I guess we weren't so silly, were we?
Yeah.
And Barry did an awful lot of filming, and he was based for quite a few years out of Florida. And so, some of the casting here, like John McKay, for example, were only in his movies.
Yes, Mr. McKay, who will be our secret agent eventually. I believe 4 credits, and 3 of them are with Barry Mahon.
Yes.
So he liked his low energy.
But I think he just saw this as, because he co-produced one, what we would call legitimate movie, Cross Swords, with Flynn and Gina Lollobrigida.
Yes.
And that was, and Errol really took on a lot of the producing chores of that film, getting Jack Cardiff involved and William Keighley.
Wow.
And it was a real, regular, big studio movie. And Gina Lollobrigid's appearance in the film is what guaranteed the Italian financing. And the movie did very well. Because Flynn was having a lot of problems at Warner Brothers at that point, and they were reducing the budgets on his movies, although he was still very highly paid. And Errol's drinking was getting the best of him, so much so he even got into conflicts with Raoul Walsh on Silver River, and they were the best of friends.
Wow.
So he wanted to break free of what he saw as the Warner Brothers shackles, and this was how he did it. Actually, in this genre, it's so funny that he had said multiple times, I'm too old to be jumping around in tights and throwing a sword around. And then when he left Warner Brothers, he does Against All Flags at Universal. And,
Yes.
he keeps doing, The Adventures of Captain Fabian and what have you, and these
Yes.
swashbucklers.
And then also with Gina Lollobrigida and Errol Flynn and Barry Mahon was the ill-fated William Tell movie.
Yes.
Correct? That was never finished. Is that true?
Also correct. And that was Jack Cardiff was directing that as well as shooting it. And they ran into some money problems along the way, and Barry Mann was doing his best to get that straightened out. And one of the cast, unfortunately a very good friend of Errol Flynn's, sued for his salary, his entire salary for the movie. And that put the whole thing into chaos. And that was Bruce Cabot. And he was one of Errol's very close drinking buddies, and he sunk the whole thing.
Wow, yeah, because I apparently they built this amazing set outside of town, and I mean they were good to go, and then it all, like a lot of projects, it fell apart. But yeah, that's one of those films that's still talked about. But yeah, so aside from trying to do some swashbuckling films, first of all, as you said, when this film, it was made or was it released in 1958, Rocket
It was
Attack,
made
USA.
in 58, and I believe not generally released, I think, by Joseph Brenner and Associates until about 1961.
Ah. And, it's funny because, yes, there's a lot of stock footage and stuff. Now here, I believe he's just running around Hazlitt, New Jersey. I believe Hazlitt, New Jersey is where they shot a lot of this. Because as you said, eventually Barry made his way down to Florida, and he was always good at using what was around him.
Yes.
And we can talk about that a little bit more, of like how he found that amusement park down in Florida. But here, here's some stock footage. All those pigeons are Russian.
Yes, they are. And,
So he got that right.
But, he was trying to knock through what he saw as a wall for independence, and he wanted to do his own movies and really control them himself for drive-ins and hard tops at inner cities, which meant he would do something like this, and then he would do a bunch of nudie cuties.
Yes.
And then eventually he started to look at what was going on with the quote-unquote kiddie matinee market.
Oh,
and
boy.
he jumped into that with both
Yes,
feet.
he sure did. I don't know what to say about this dancing.
Well, she's very attractive, I would say that.
The woman watching the dancer looks completely bored out of her mind.
And there's John McKay.
Yes,
who,
our leading man.
our leading man, who to me resembles kind of a young Carl Betts.
Spot on, my friend. I was just going to say that. Yes.
And,
Wait, here he goes. He has to establish contacts without being observed. I think everyone in the place just saw that, but
yeah,
okay.
so he's the only blonde in the room.
Yes. And he just stumbled,
Walks in, yes.
kind of handed her. Yeah. But yeah, the candles in the wine bottles, it's just spot on. You really feel like you're in Russia. Oh my goodness. And as we were saying at the very, very beginning of this movie, you have to love that it says Exploit Films
Yes.
presents. Spot on.
Well, This was the thing. Everybody was in such a heightened sense of paranoia, especially as this was during the time that what triggered this movie's production was the same thing that triggered Roger Corman's War of the Satellites, was the launching of Sputnik.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, after World War II, the Cold War heated up, and certainly McCarthyism lit a match, and suddenly you're either with them or against them, and paranoia was everywhere, and people were terrified there were Reds behind and under every bed, and
of course,
a lot of exploitation Cold War films were made.
Absolutely.
And some are fantastic, and some are not. One of my favorites is Ray Milland's Panic in Year Zero.
Oh, that's a very good movie.
Yeah, I really like that one. I believe that's 1962. But yes, of this type of low-budget exploitation film, of course, as you said, I think this was finally released in 1960, Rocket Attack USA. The very next year was Beast of Yucca Flats.
Yes.
with
shows
Plan 9's Tor Johnson as you have to buy him as a nuclear scientist, by the way. But that movie is I actually find that movie kind of a lot of fun. It's pretty bad though.
Well,
yeah, he gets turned into some kind of nuclear mutant
and wanders around in the desert.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
But yeah, there were Red Zone Cuba. There were a lot of movies because people did go to see them. They would put these into drive-ins on a double or triple bill, and
but
people went and saw them.
So much was happening with the Soviet at this time, because you have to remember too that this movie, when it was started, by the time it came out, the Berlin Wall had just gone up.
Yes.
So things were getting a lot worse and heightening, everyone's paranoia.
Yes.
Including, of course,
us versus them.
Khrushchev famously, "We will bury you."
Yeah.
Which actually was said to Polish dignitaries, not to anyone from the United States.
Wow.
And
he meant
the West.
He might have said it to that fire eater.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Whenever I see these fire eaters, you got to admire these guys, but I always try and think of who was the first one to try it, and how did it go?
Yeah, I was going to say, was it successful?
Well, no, you're sitting around the fire, right? You're bored. Maybe some vodka's being imbibed in, and hey, you know what? I think I can do this. But anyway, that's quite a nightclub he went to. You had a kind of Mid-Eastern belly dancer, and then you had some fire eaters.
And
but he gave her the secret codes.
Now he's got his trench coat on.
Did anyone see you?
No, I waited till the porter went upstairs to the floor above.
And she is look out, kissing persuasive lips.
I love this. She goes, "Can I verify your papers?" He's like, "Come on, I'm a spy. I'm wearing a trench coat."
And
they don't make trench coats like that anymore.
Boy, they sure don't.
With the belt.
And we are all the poorer for it.
Oh, I'll say. I love trench coats like that.
And she is not as slinky as one would expect a Russian agent to be.
At one point she says, "What are your plans?" It's like, well, obviously not cue pickups.
Yes.
The pacing here. I mean, they a lot of these people who did work with Barry would say that many times there was not a script. He would just kind of tell them what he wanted them to say, and then they would roll the camera. Now, I don't know if that's true for Rocket Attack USA, but maybe for some of the kiddie films he later went on to make.
Well, of course, too, whatever new footage he was shooting had to be incorporated around footage that he owned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real science to do that well. And with his own background and that company, and I know that they were making regional car commercials and things like that. So they were grinding film all the time, and the features ran, literally from soup to nuts.
Well, I loved how you brought up that just before making Rocket Attack USA, the film before this is Cuban Rebel Girls. With Mr. Flynn.
Yes. And Beverly Adland.
Oh, yes.
His girlfriend.
Mr. Flynn's rather young girlfriend. But yeah, so he Cuban rebel girls, and then makes Rocket Attack USA.
So the pro-Castro movie followed by the anti-communist movie. So yeah, a little bit of a conflict there.
Yes, but
in ideology.
Whatever, put the butts in the seats, so to speak.
You know, Mark, that's the thing. When Barry Mann was in charge of Errol Flynn's business affairs, and you see that spate of movies that he did after he left Warner Brothers, and some were like Adventures of Captain Fabian, not major things, others like Against All Flags, which was for Universal, and of course The Sun Also Rises. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Barry Mann was going to do a film with Robert Evans after The Sun Also Rises.
Wow.
They had thought about doing a movie together with Evans starring in it. All of the money that Errol Flynn made on those films went to pay back taxes.
Oh, boy.
And he was so far in the hole. And I think that's why he just was kind of grabbing at whatever he could. And he was still a big enough star that he was getting real paychecks.
Yeah.
But Errol Flynn Theater, which was something Barry Mann executive produced, that had some money behind it when they were shooting it in England. And you had people like Christopher Lee and folks like that, Patrick Troughton in the show. And again, all that money went straight to the tax man.
To the sheriff of Nottingham.
Yep.
Oh, that's rough to hear. So here's some stock footage of them working away. Oh boy, this is, Courtney, would you say, we're talking about, Cold War films and all that. Isn't it true that it's widely considered that the 1948 film, The Iron Curtain, was the first one, so to speak?
Yes.
That's Gene Tierney, right?
And Dana Andrews. Yes, that was Fox.
Okay. And that's 1948.
Yes, it absolutely is.
And then, as you said, they flooded in the 1950s all these types of movies. And then even in the early 60s, they were still doing well. They would still find an audience.
But, there's a bit of a dip, I think, in the attitude once we move into the 60s, because rather than the, if you will, rocket hysteria of will they push a button, nobody is safe, and all of that type of stuff, espionage took hold, and it certainly Ian Fleming had emerged, as had James Bond.
Yes.
In 1957, I believe, was the first Bond novel, and then so did John le Carré.
Yes.
And I honestly believe that The Spy Who Came In From the Cold changed everything. Mm-hmm. Because it was so realistic.
Yes, so well done.
So well done. And then they made the wonderful movie from it in 1963. But you had Bond as the fantasy espionage.
Speaking of Bond, so was Dr. No 62?
The movie is, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the first Bond film comes out in 62. And then, boy, and that franchise is still going.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting because of the genre that we're talking about. I love Failsafe, and that's 64, right?
Well, this movie shares something when we get to it with Failsafe, and also with Dr. Strangelove, which makes this a little unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, of course, Failsafe and Strangelove were both the subject of a big plagiarism lawsuit.
Well,
And that was for the novel Red Alert. And I believe actually it was Strangelove that was sued.
Did they win?
And what they decided to do was to split the distribution. Columbia had both movies, and they had to be separated from each other, and there was a payout to the author of Red Alert.
Wow!
Because when you see Strangelove and Failsafe back to back, it's a of course they're in many ways identical to each other.
That's very, very interesting. Yeah, and then Also, aside from Failsafe, I think one of the best ones from this genre is, of course, actually the same year, I believe, as Failsafe, is 7 Days in May.
Yes.
Which is just terrific.
And, here during the 50s, we're noting the names at
is he hiding in
front.
The closet?
Yes, he is.
Here's a little cheesecake, but now she's putting on Barry Mahon's coat. There you go.
I'm sorry. I got rid of him.
Well, now this is where things get a little dicey because he's getting mad that she's playing footsie with this guy from the Kremlin.
She is sleeping with this
and she says
Russian
so,
guy
yes.
to get information.
Yes, I did.
They do not tiptoe around that. That is true.
There has been a split in the Pacific.
But when we were looking at the credits, you notice that one of the producers is a man named Steve Brody, and that is actually a pseudonym for Steve Broidy, who was the president of Allied Artists.
Right, Broidy.
Yes.
Right? And he just took the I out for this credit?
He did, and I think that this was Barry Mann went to him, made a deal, and for Monogram or Allied Artists rather to distribute, which they looked at the film and they said, "Forget it, we are not going to put this out." Even though they were handling everything from The Indestructible Man to Friendly Persuasion, and then of course to probably one of the very best paranoia films of the 50s, Don Siegel's Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes, they're coming. Well, it's just I love how many medals they gave him.
Yes, this is. I don't know if that really is appropriate dress for this kind of meeting. I don't know how accurate it is. But this is also kind of an interesting thing that Barry does here, is these scenes are in Russian.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not up on my Russian, but I assume they're speaking real Russian.
And without subtitles.
Yes.
But we do have this narration, which of course would have been cheaper than to going ahead to an optical printer and putting in subtitles.
Right. I believe he was pointing to New York.
And yes, New York is in fact the target.
Yes.
A la Failsafe.
Here's General Watkins, and if you look up this actor, this is his only credit. Sad that it didn't lead to more, but...
Well, filmmakers like Barry Mann, and I would put in, since we mentioned Florida, say somebody like Herschel Gordon Lewis and a lot of these indie guys from this period, they would go ahead and draft local newsmen and somebody who had
sat in front of a camera before.
Exactly.
And
go ahead and put them in the movie. And it usually served multiple purposes. A, they weren't expensive. B, they had some experience. And C, the hope that if they had some sort of a broadcasting platform, they'd talk about the movie.
Yes.
And I think Herschel Gordon Lewis's greatest example of that was putting Colonel Sanders in. I believe that was 2000 Maniacs. I think that's correct.
Well, and also, guys like, Barry Mahon and Herschel Gordon Lewis and Ed Wood, for that matter, and even Al Adamson, they gave hope to these other regional guys who wanted to make movies no matter what. Whether you're fans of them or not, but like Andy Milligan on Staten Island.
Yep.
And then even Ed Adlam, who in upstate New York gave us Invasion of the Blood Farmers, one of my favorite grade Z movies. But I always admired that ability of, I've got a camera, I want to make a movie, and whether they, offered the actors a 12-pack of beer or a sandwich, there's something kind of, let's put on a show to that I kind of like.
Well, I remember Charlie Band used to always say that those very early days, and he was a young kid, he was like 19, makes his first movie, and to get it distributed, he just threw the prints in the back of a car and drove around to theaters to see who would buy it.
That's amazing.
And he used to talk about that. It says how much fun it was, because of course you never knew where your next meal was coming from, but you had your movie and you had those film cans on the seat next to him, and let's stop at this drive-in and see if they'll throw it up on the screen.
So the actress here is Monica Davis, and it's interesting, of the cast of this movie, aside from Art Matrano, who we'll talk about a little bit more when he appears, but she has 13 credits. So, in the early 60s and all throughout the 60s, she kept working, and she's also in Barry Mahon's zombie movie, The Dead One, which where did he went down to Louisiana to make that, correct?
The first zombie film in color.
Wow, that's right.
And well, I'll tell you what, she sure knows how to kiss. That was a humdinger we just saw.
Yeah. All right, here we are. I love this. Boy, there they are in New Jersey. Let's put up these walls, and they got some costume shop to give them costumes.
I'm not even quite sure what those walls represent.
And it's funny, when I first was rewatching this, and you look at that stuff in the back, I thought, did he just put up volleyball nets? But no, that is some form of barbed wire. What's pretty funny though is that the lowest line of barbed wire, you could have a 300-pound guy crawl under it, no problem. But that's neither here nor there.
And, well, I wonder too, in the amount of time that he allowed himself to make these movies and get it in the can, then try and raise money for the next one. And he was always following the trends. And but it is interesting on this movie that was such a hot topic that it did end up going to a low-end distributor.
Mm-hmm.
And because, as you said, well, what do we do with this when we do have, the spy who came in from the cold or whatever it is from a major?
Yes.
And in fact, what we should do is just throw this on, the bottom of a double bill with, Destination Inner Space or something.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, so after this, as you said, just follow the trail for him. After this, is that when he made The Dead One? He went down to Louisiana?
Yes.
And made the zombie movie. And then, as you said, and then because they were popular, he got into the naughty films, so to speak.
Yes.
And he made quite a few of those, did he not?
Quite a few.
Yes.
And usually with one or two strippers of some note at the time. And again, always kind of so threadbare because he was not going to spend money that he did not have to spend. And again, here's this guy, he's a flying ace and all the rest of it, but he was obviously a pretty sharp man with the numbers.
Yeah.
And so he knew exactly, probably to the penny, what he had to spend and was not going to go beyond that.
Yes, and again, as you said, and then give the people what they want. And so when these kind of naughty films became popular, boy, he made like 10 of them, I believe.
And also he did the shorts. Yes. And a lot of that, and the nudist camp films, of course.
Yes, down in Florida.
Down in Florida, exactly.
And you got to love, sometimes he just didn't care about the title. One of the shorts is Nude in a Pool.
Yes.
So it's like, gee, I wonder what this is about.
And there's also...
and sometimes the not so subtle, The Girl with the Magic Box.
Yes, or The Beast That Killed Women.
Okay.
And
Nude a Go-Go.
Nude a Go-Go, absolutely.
The Swinging Nurses.
And he, but of course also there, again, Florida was like a central point for this kind of filmmaking because of also people like Doris Wishman.
Yes.
And so...
Well, Nudes on the Moon, oh my goodness.
Yep.
That's really something.
Now, some of this footage
Bad
here.
Girls Go to Hell.
Oh, you
I got.
bet.
Did you ever get to meet her? I got to meet Doris Wishman.
I never did.
Yes, she was cantankerous, but I really liked meeting her.
I had a friend who worked for her, and they were filming something in Santa Monica, and Doris Wishman sat down next to my friend and said, "Look, why don't you just direct this scene? I'm too tired." And she did.
Oh boy, that is fascinating though. How they all gathered in Florida, mid '60s, and as you said, whether they could go to a strip club and find somebody, or go to these nudist colonies, and they churned them out.
And I'm sure that the laws were so lax, or who was going to enforce it, or whatever, was the reason that everybody did congregate in Florida. And then I'm sure
These would usually play at the naughty films, at least at downtown movie theaters.
Exactly.
Correct? And gentlemen would show up, and yeah. One of these titles, though, I love this title. A Barry Mahon film from 1966, Prostitutes Protective Society.
Oh, there you go. I think, I don't know if I still have my membership card. I think I do.
Now, this guy is supposed to be a top secret agent, and then he noticed that the guy put the envelope under the door after opening the door and pulling the guy in.
And
oh yes, this is supposed to be the British agent.
The British agent,
and
yes.
I like that he doesn't even try.
Well, now you see, you don't know that.
That's
he
true.
could be affecting an American
You're
accent as
absolutely
part of
right.
his undercover
You're
identity.
absolutely
So
right. How
let's not
dare
jump to
I?
any conclusions here.
You're right. How dare I? And by the way, we know he's British because I believe he's wearing an ascot.
Yes, that's the
Which
dead
I think
giveaway.
I think Terry Thomas wore an ascot in like 12 straight movies.
So yes, he was not paying attention in spy school apparently. So
So I like that they're teaming up, the Brits and the Americans, to fight the damn Ruskies.
And the thing is too, Mark, when you get into this, I don't want to say this level of filmmaking, but movies made this way for this little bit of money, often by the regional filmmakers and stuff. We take a step back. The competition among these guys was intense.
It really
because they're
was.
all trying to get into the same theaters and the same theater chains, especially in the South and in the inner cities. And so this was not an easy way to go. You really were a traveling salesman.
Yes, and yet the one thing all of these regional filmmakers had going for them is the drive-ins needed material. You had to feed the machine. And they definitely were trying to provide the sausage. There's no doubt about it.
And
I love this set.
well, it was,
Okay, I'm going to wear my trench coat, and I'm going to hide behind this partial chimney, smoke the hell out of that cigarette. And here we go.
And careful, yes.
Careful. He's part of the Spy Protective Society.
This is as far as I go.
This is as far as I go.
Yes, his again, the British accent is definitely lacking. And
well, again, as we said, though, after the kind of naughty, nudie films kind of wore out their welcome, he completely does a 360 and starts making quote-unquote family films.
And part of the launch pad for that, I think, for him, was the K. Gordon Murray Mexican imports.
Oh, yes.
Like Santa Claus and those things. And he was putting those into the theaters with unbelievable success.
Yes, and Little Red Riding Hood
Yep.
versus the Monsters, which has to be seen to be
Yes.
believed. But yes,
Rumpelstiltskin.
absolutely.
Yep.
He would sort of kind of dub them, and they made a lot of money. And as you said, he followed the money. And because he was down in Florida, a kind of low-budget amusement park opened, Pirates World. And he got to know the people there, and they let him come there before they opened up to the public. And he shot, 5 different movies in that space. It's interesting. I do commentary and segments for NPR and Slate, and I did a standalone piece on Barry Mahon's Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny, which for children who got left off at some matinee on a Saturday afternoon and didn't know what they were about to see, that thing still haunts people. It is beyond bizarre. It's like an acid trip. But yeah, he would crank that out, and Thumbelina, and his Wizard of Oz has to be seen to be believed.
And of course, these are in between Knockers McGraw meets the Red Baron, so.
And Fanny Hill meets Dr. Erotico or something like that?
Yes. Actually, it was Fanny Hill meets the Red Baron. Which I'm sure Barry flew the plane himself.
Oh, yeah, I bet you he did. So initially, when he met Errol Flynn, was he like his pilot?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, that's the other fascinating part about Hollywood is how many of these guys came back from the wars with that skill.
Yep.
Same with William Wellman and a lot of other people, and they kept flying. They'd fly these small planes, and they, at certain times they would land them on the lawns of friends at a party and say, "I'm here."
Absolutely.
But that's amazing that he meets Errol Flynn, and then what, as you said, aside from that, he became his business manager. And when did Flynn pass away?
It was the early '60s. I want to say about 1961.
Yeah, so they worked right up together till the end.
To the very end, because Barry was trying to get Flynn out of debt.
Yeah.
In fact, Flynn died in Canada.
That's right.
And he was up there to negotiate the sale of his yacht. That money to go to the taxman.
Englishman.
And he died in the home of the fellow who was going to buy it.
Man. Well, they caught the British guy.
Well, here he has a little bit of a kind of a Lawrence Harvey vibe.
Yes, that's true. He's hoping they don't frisk his ascot. That's where all the information is.
And also, too, with these films that were being made for so little money, we talked, mentioned movies like the things that K. Gordon Murray was importing, but this was also at the time that American International and some of the big studios, even MGM, were buying movies made in Italy.
Yes.
And saving money that way. And of course, that includes Joseph E. Levine's massive hit with Hercules. And all of that. So the business was just changing so rapidly. And what was your money outlay? Is everything got to be in CinemaScope? Does everything have to be in color? Because they were also in such a panic about television shutting movies down. So they were going through absolutely every avenue they could for product.
And constantly being surprised on what would pop.
Yes.
Because as you said, like when the sword and sandal stuff took off, they were like, okay, let's make more of these. Or let's buy more of these from overseas. Yes, it was a very interesting time. It really was. And then, of course, with the drive-ins throughout the country, they exploded. And you want to talk about regional audiences, because certain things would do so well down in the South or in the Midwest that maybe would not find an audience in some of the big cities. So they were always very attuned to that. And guys like Barry Mahon were keeping their ear to the ground and doing whatever they could to make whatever they thought the audience wanted to see.
I got a press book for an American International movie package. This was in the 1970s, and they still were renting things like I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. They're still renting their black and white movies to drive-ins across the country. And they would package it with something like The Terror or Pit and the Pendulum or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it was really remarkable to me that movies that old were still finding a place on screens just because the need for product was so intense.
Yes.
And I'm sure that those prints, to rent them, cost nothing. And if you wanted a Dusk Till Dawn show or something like that, that was how you did it.
Yes. Well, in the 70s when they were still going strong, I certainly went to tons of drive-ins and saw everything from Devil's Reign to Dirty Harry and Crazy Larry, or vice versa.
Dirty Mary. Crazy Larry.
Gotta get those names right.
Yeah, Susan George.
Yes,
right?
my goodness. And Warren Oates, right? Aside from Mr. Fonda.
Oh, that's Race with the Devil.
Oh, my goodness. See, I'm getting my 70s satanic RV movies.
Exactly. That's all right. You're definitely allowed.
But yes, going to see all that, and it just Courtney, don't you agree? There's such a difference between if you saw a movie in a drive-in or if you saw it in a movie theater.
Absolutely.
It just made so much more of an impression.
I always thought it was...
Whether you were in your pajamas or
exactly.
not.
Well, the fact that Barry chose to make this movie in black and white.
Yes.
When it was at a time...
Oh, no.
Up, there she goes.
Monica.
And he goes, Johnny, I'm okay. Go, escape. And
Don't worry about me.
This is
Nothing can get through that trench coat.
No, this is a pretty cool move that she pulls here.
Yep.
I like this.
Me too.
You gotta watch it, man. Deadly is the female. There you go. Now they couldn't afford blanks, but still. There you go.
Wow, like right out of Red Dawn.
Well,
got him right in the back.
And again, this is at a time when so many people were demanding color.
Yes.
And when
such a big deal.
Black and white movies, like say The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, for example, that was an artistic choice to be made because they wanted it to feel more real, and people associated black and white with news footage and things like that, and that became the label for black and white filmmaking. And this was really one of the last gasps of that happening, because and also too, they wanted to sell these movies to television, and you were going to get a much different price for something that was in color than in black and white.
Yes, that's very true. So, knowing what kind of budgets he had to work with, is this just public domain music, would you say?
That would be my guess, yes.
Yes. Well, you and I were talking about, some of these credits when you see the name of the individual who supposedly was the director of photography and all that. It was probably all Barry Mahon, correct?
Yes.
And he just grabbed pseudonyms, because then when you would look up these individuals, this would be their only credit. Rocket Attack USA.
That move,
all right, here we go. Look at that.
Yeah.
Somebody had to build that.
Well, that move with the soldier, my guess is Barry probably was very instrumental in directing John McKay how to do it, because he slit that guy's throat. That was a real military maneuver.
Yes.
And
that was stab him in the lower back.
No, sir.
Yeah.
And I bet Barry said, nope, this is the way you do it. Yeah, it's just so fascinating to me that this guy was the real deal, and he ended up, Santa Claus.
Yes. And Thumbelina and nudie films, and he became one of the big exploitation kings.
And yet remains, except probably for maybe Cuban Rebel Girls, and now people are kind of rediscovering the dead one. He's really, I think, remarkably anonymous until I mentioned him to you, and then suddenly we were off and flying.
Well, that was because of my Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny admiration. It's truly amazing, his life and everything. It's quite a story.
Well, and something else.
He made it to be 78 years old. He
Yep.
passed away in 1999, so he almost made it to the millennium. Oh no, Courtney.
Okay, yes. This is what makes this movie a little unusual. That our heroes have been machine gunned.
Yes. Wait, see, he doesn't even hide it. There's Hazlitt.
Yep.
Yeah, it shows you. I did my research. But here we are in Hazlitt, New Jersey, part of Monmouth County. God, look at those cars. My goodness.
Boy, one of those cars would be the budget of this movie now.
That's very, very true. But again, so yes, he was up north, out of New York City. They go down to Jersey and shoot all of this stuff, and then, as you said, he then ended up in Florida and used everything he could in that area, and that's what these guys would do.
Well, also a lot of the thing with which might seem kind of, you have to look at the arithmetic, but guys like Barry and some of the other indie filmmakers we mentioned, a big element we can never forget is they very often ended up owning the negatives to these movies. So they were a continuous revenue stream.
Yeah.
And it would go to them. It wouldn't go to the distributor or the guys at Universal or whoever it might be, because he was not selling off his own films, and he was building a library, which he successfully did. And just to have the never-ending life. And this movie is such a, if you will, a time capsule. And
there he is.
Look into it. Yep.
So
That's
there's
amazing.
young Art Matrano, and I'm sure he's, even at this young age, is familiar as a face to many people, because he had a heck of a career, over 120 film and TV credits, and boy, that's a horrible tragedy he suffered, though. Right in the late 80s, he literally fell off the ladder at his house and was paralyzed.
Oh my God!
Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Oh yes. Was paralyzed, and he was literally like cleaning the gutters or something. This happened in 1989, and he ended up doing a one-man show about it, and yet through like years and years of physical therapy, he was able to then, at least like with assistance and with crutches and all that, was able to walk. But yes, that was really an incredible thing that happened to him. But yes, he's in some of the Police Academy movies, and as you and I were briefly discussing, he became a staple of all the talk shows. He had a very, literally a bad magician act. But he worked all the time. He worked all the time. I just love that he, I don't know whether he showed up for, was there any kind of audition for this, or I have no idea.
He may have just walked on in. And one of my favorite
I know he was a New York boy. I mean, I know he was born like in Bensonhurst, so. But
a favorite appearance, of course, Art Matrano is the nightclub act that they go see in The Heartbreak Kid.
Oh my gosh, that is right.
And yep. And he irritates the hell out of Eddie Albert. It's just wonderful.
Leave it to Elaine May to do that. That's amazing. Yeah, and but Art Matrano, he's in History of the World Part 1, and he's in a lot of movies, a lot of television shows.
The successful launchings of our many satellites apparently
And
has closed the gap.
now this is, again, how far away from the reality of what a news report about the potential of the launch of a nuclear missile from Russia. And I think Barry probably did his homework pretty well here, because this sure sounds, pretty accurate in its vocabulary and cadence and everything else. And of course, here we have everybody sitting around with their medals, and they are deciding to launch. And of course, they're going to launch against New York. And I wonder,
Gosh, if this had
audience.
happened, if this had actually happened, there never would have been the New York Mets.
Nope.
That would have depressed me very, very much. Oh, I always love any of these low-budget films that have these type of big so-called electronic devices. I would love to know what that actually was. Because he's just, they tell the guy, just flip some switches and turn some dials. Yeah, that's fine.
And here we go. And this is actually, that's at least the thinking is accurate, because that was the way launch codes used to be done on rockets, was on magnetic tape. And this was the reference point. And I can only imagine, of course, look, we've had all the short films in schools about duck and cover and all of that stuff. So everybody was always very aware of an atomic attack.
I was not old enough for that, but I have a sister who's much older than me, and she totally, when she was in elementary school, she so remembers the old duck and cover. And of course, you can find those educational films where they're instructing you to do that.
Yep.
Well, that's just it. Speaking of educational films or even short films that were put out by the military or the government during this Cold War thing, didn't Jack Webb make a famous one?
Yes, he did.
Where the guy, he's literally, arrested and brought to a camp, and then he wakes up and it's just a dream. The Reds didn't get him.
Yes.
Yeah. So all aspects of filmmaking. They were taking care of this, as we said earlier, a true paranoia that...
There was one, I believe it was made by the Air Force, called, I think it's called The Face of Communism, where the guy goes into the small town and the entire town has been taken over by the communists, but he can't tell until suddenly he's violated this rule and that rule, and everyone speaks in terms of us and what have you, and you're not going anywhere, and all of this. And it's a very, it in fact reminds me of Siegel's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's very, very effective. And what is about to happen, and well, we shouldn't give away too much since we have a few minutes to go. But again, it's surprising to me and actually shocking. And I'm sure probably when Barry would show this movie around after they made it, say he showed it to Warner Brothers, he even showed it to American International, they probably said, can't we do something about this ending?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he said no.
He stuck to his...
he sure did.
Stuck to his guns. Stuck to his rockets. Oh no, that tape's going to be ruined.
And now we see there's the... Now...
My Moby Grape recordings.
Here is
Boy, did you like that effect, though, of the rocket?
The cutaways to... The animated cutaways to the rocket are not the greatest.
No. I just... This is amazing. Just whatever footage we can find, and let's do this. And then, do we need to see the rocket again?
And unfortunately, we do.
Oh, I love it. That's just fantastic.
There it
Look
is.
at that. That's right up there with Ed Wood's Flying Saucers.
And yeah, they bought that footage from something.
Yeah. And then we're just going to put you against a wall and you talk on a phone.
And and again, it does. It's so threadbare and seems so silly that what is going to happen in about 4 minutes is all the more shocking.
Yes.
Because you just think that, oh, well, it's not going to actually go in the direction we think it's going to go. Wrong. And which is also what it has very much in common with Failsafe.
Yes.
And Strangelove.
Very true. And it's interesting because I wanted to make sure. So they shot this in 1958 in New Jersey, and then by the time he was able to sell it, it premiered in a movie theater in Brunswick, New Jersey, March 24th, 1960.
Okay.
So March 24th, 1960, everyone in New Brunswick, New Jersey could go and be scared. I like this extreme close-up on him. And he sort of kind of knows his lines.
But yeah, I believe he is reading them from someone holding up a cue card out of camera range.
Oh.
And
this guy's trying to finish his one-act play before the end of the world. Another SIG alert, Courtney.
Yep.
Oh, no.
And here we go. And this, again, I was like, you're watching this and going, my gosh, I can't assume anything.
Oh, that guy, enjoy that pizza. You have no idea. Oh, man, 15 cents a slice.
There you go.
Those were the good old days.
What I like about these scenes is everyone always goes, oh, we're so used to that. They sound those things off all the time. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
And they blow it off, which is pretty realistic.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, Art Matrano has no idea what's about to
Yeah,
come.
he's supposed to wear a necktie on his date so he can prove that he's a gentleman. And
this was his very, very, very first gig as an actor, too, by the way.
yeah, he was kind of a rake there before he gained all the weight.
Yeah, and then yet it worked as a character actor because he's in everything from They Only Kill Their Masters to All in the Family, and I mean he worked all the time.
I repeat, this is a red alert.
It's a red alert.
It is a red alert, and this just the rhythm of this and the cutting and everything else. I can't imagine that Sidney Lumet did not see this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was, well, we're not going to have to worry about doing something like this, or they were just looking at all the similar films before they went ahead and they made their movie.
Attention, this is a real raid. Your lives are endangered.
And you know they just shot this in the middle of the street. God knows what everybody was thinking.
They freaked out everyone in Hazlitt, New Jersey.
Yep.
Oh, that poor little tot.
And
yeah, because even my mom would talk about that. They knew where the air raid shelters were, and well.
Yep, this is the stuff that
Courtney, if it's Rod Steiger closing up the pawn shop.
Yep, exactly.
Oh my God! You know what? Why even bother? Why even bother locking it up? Yeah, look up. That's fine.
To those of you still listening, follow these instructions if you can't get under.
And here's the instructions, which includes I believe this includes the wet newspapers.
Touch or eat anything, and above all, keep calm and follow instructions. All radio should be turned to civil defense at 640
Keep
and 1240
calm.
on your dial.
And follow instructions, and there it is.
There it is.
Okay, let me have it. That's what I thought.
I have a feeling this might be Mrs. Berry.
Wow. I do know he was married to one woman his whole life.
Yep, and his daughter markets some of his movies now.
That's right. She became a pretty successful producer, correct?
Yes, she did.
She married, I think Keating was her last name or something like that. Yes. It's nice to see that it continued on in the family. No, I mean, as we said, these people who had, you got to admire their chutzpah. And yes, I'm going to use the word moxie.
Yeah. Well,
Bring that word back, Courtney.
Scraping the dough together to do whatever they could do.
And make enough money to make another one?
Yep. And he made enough money to make a lot of them.
Yes.
Anti-missile device. We might.
And whether or not he had ambitions beyond this level, but that's the thing. He started at the studio level.
Yes.
And so that was, obviously he was comfortable where he was because he could control it. And more importantly, he could control the money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say, I can't really say I've seen his nudie films, but those children films are, boy, they are so bizarre. I kind of recommend them, seriously, if you're able to watch some of those. You just can't kind of believe it. But yes, here we go. Boy.
And,
You see stuff like this and you're just like, what am I dieting for?
yes, exactly.
I'm going to have that pizza today.
Well, also, we're seeing things here, whether it was stock footage or whatever it might be.
Taxi. Harry S. Truman can't get a taxi.
Yes. We're actually seeing stuff that a lot of other, we wouldn't see otherwise, because he was pulling footage out of vaults and everything else to piece this together.
Yeah.
And here's the little day the earth stood still moment.
People aren't going to get their Blondie. Yes, this I remember this. He asked people to help him.
Yep.
And I don't know if anyone does. She looks pretty calm.
We're all going away from the shelter. It's probably not the wisest thing to do.
The President has called a meeting of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to discuss retaliation for this unwarranted attack. The White House has been moved to its emergency headquarters.
But as you were saying, though, the crux of the films from this genre, the bleakness just totally is a sign of the times. People were on edge and people were afraid. And yes, they would tap into that. Absolutely.
That was the perfect thing to exploit. And it really was, whether it was done for multi-million dollars at Warner Brothers or it was done this way. And
right on cue.
It made no difference. And
wow,
this, of course,
look at
also,
that shot, though.
Yep.
That's
it reminds me of another post-nuclear Holocaust, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil.
Yes.
This is Bill Deal, signing off.
All right, Bill Deal.
Pat, dear, if you can hear me, it just dawned on me that I probably won't see you or little Bill again. This is because I've been stubborn. I'm sorry.
This little bit reminds me of the wonderful moment with Charles Aidman in Failsafe, where he doesn't believe he's speaking to his wife.
Yes. And for those, listening who, if you've never seen Failsafe or 7 Days in May, we highly recommend you check those out. Those are very well done films of this
and very scary.
Genre. Yes. It does make a difference whether it's Frederick March and Edmund O'Brien.
Yep. And
there you go.
It's
that.
And they did it. It's like there was no.
Areas were spared, but metropolitan New York City was almost completely destroyed, with a death toll of well over 3 million.
There it is. I mean,
there you go.
Completely unexpected. Wait a minute, isn't there?
Forget getting
Somebody
a good pastrami sandwich now.
To stop this. This cannot be. Let this be the end.
Now that's an ending. That's an ending.